Right, welcome to another edition of the Iron Hour podcast. I'm Barra, as you know, joined by Marco, Gareth, and excitingly this time by Scunthorpe United chairman and owner David Hilton. How are you feeling, David?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah, very, very softly spoken to kick off.
I'm sure it'll heat up.
Yeah. How would you like to be addressed, David, Dave?
Sir? No.
Chairman.
Dave's fine.
Mr. Chairman,
Dave's
sir.
fine.
Dave, okay. And obviously a big shout out to our sponsors, know.film, who are doing absolute bits for us. They've come on site today to record us here at Ilkeston Town Football Club, which, you know, the news broke this week, didn't it? That will be the training facility, probably short term, I guess. We can get onto that for the Scunthorpe United coming up. Right, I'm going to jump straight into the interview then, Dave, if that's okay. So you mentioned in your statement, so you touched on some of the reasons why you purchased Scunthorpe United. Do you regret any decision to purchase the club?
That's a nice, easy one to start with. Yes and no. You know, I think before purchasing Scunthorpe, I was in a comfort zone. Life was comfortable. Life was much easier. And it's been a tough week. It's been a tough week. I think I certainly expected some negativity and some people to be untrusting of me, of my staff, of the plans. But what I didn't expect is the veracity of some of what is happening. I expected, and I believe I've paid the amount of money that I've put in so far. I've paid for the right to have a bit of time, and I think that's the only downside for me. I don't feel like I'm being given that time at the minute to try and implement the plans that I have. You know, at the end of the day, I'm not putting the money into the football club to lose the money. I have to implement the plans for the plans to work, for the club to progress, and for me to achieve some sort of benefit for the money that I'm putting in. Quite clearly, there's no financial benefit from owning a football club, as I spoke about before. So there was not regret. You know, it's just been tough. And if I could turn the clock back and maybe look and say, I could see this, you know, happening, would I have been so keen at the start? I can't say for certain that I would have been. But I'm here now. I can't have regrets. I don't really have time for regret. I've just got to crack on, suck it up, and crack on.
So with that in mind, then, would you still say you are very committed to the football club of Scunthorpe United, and will you continue to invest in the players that you have so far since you've come in?
100%, 100%.
So it's looking like relegation is very likely at this point, down to the 6th tier. You've already invested quite heavily in the players for this season. How will the budget compare next season to the likes of the money that you've invested so far?
It's difficult to talk numbers at the minute purely because the budget has to be sustainable. So there's, as we've spoken about and we're going to speak about, you know, not just in my statement that people are already aware of, but obviously we'll speak about it today, no doubt. Some of the questions will be around the cost-cutting exercises at the club. There are other areas that we need to sharpen up to make sure they're cost-effective.
Yeah.
We then have obviously current playing staff, so I need to sit down with the manager and see how that looks in respect of who he wants to retain, who's going to leave, and how their salaries with the current playing staff that we've got look. There's a lot still, you know, sponsorship levels. Once the stadium is into the company, will the membership levels pick up? So there's a lot that can still be incorporated. The more that comes in will all be put into the playing budget. So the more the playing budget can be. Season ticket sales, there's so much that, you know, shirt sales, we could go on and on and on. At the end of the day, a sustainable club means that the income revenue that comes into the club, arguably the majority of that will go into the playing budget because of the cost-cutting exercises that we're putting in place. And that will be as high as we can make it. I anticipate that we've already know we're going to be full-time. You know, we'll never be a part-time on the pitch. I envisage that we will almost certainly have the highest playing budget in the division. I think that goes without saying with the size of the fan base that we have and the size of the club that we are. We'll certainly have the biggest playing budget in the division. Unless there's a couple of surprises. I don't want to be disrespectful to other clubs because I don't know what their budgets are, but if we're not the biggest, we'll certainly be high up there. And yeah, so I can't put a number on it right now, but everything that we are doing is based around making that figure as big as possible.
I think we're going to move on now to some quite difficult and awkward topics. So I'd like to say to those listening and watching, you have made this very clear to us in the build-up to this interview that you will not be vetting any questions. You will basically take any questions from us. You even offered on multiple occasions to do this interview live. So, I'd like to make that very clear that you have continuously told us in the build-up to this that you have nothing to hide, do you, David?
No, not at all.
So with that in mind, I think I'd like to touch one of the really crucial topics from the statement. Certainly to me, personally, it was a big one. And it obviously regards the academy. I'll touch again, for those of you that have listened to the previous episodes, you will know my son plays in the Scunthorpe United Academy, so this is something that's quite emotionally charged for me. You knew that, you still agreed to do this interview, so we are thankful for that. But the first question I would ask you was, the statement kind of said that the academy will effectively close from the end of the season. Was every other option explored before you came to that conclusion?
To a degree, it maybe should have been explored more. But I think, and without making excuses, when you come into a football club, there's a hell of a lot going off, so it's, the academy was one of the first things that I did look at. I've showed you guys a message, but I can't, who it was to, it was somebody senior at the club, and you then saw the corresponding messages that mentions people within the academy. So you're fully aware that on the 9th of March, I stipulated that the academy would close. In that message, I explained very clearly that the year 1 scholars need to be found a club for their year 2. And that was my mindset, because we needed to we were going to lose the funding, and therefore that the club, if the club is to progress, quite simply, the academy needed to end temporarily, might I add, but it needed to end until we got back to where we wanted to be. I did ask people to come back to me with ideas of how we could potentially restructure and how it could look.
A scaled back version.
A scaled back version. And things were brought to, in all honesty, things were brought to me. But the problem was to scale back in the avenue of basically not having the EFL fund. If we had the EFL funding, we have to work by the EFL guidelines. Mm-hmm. And the expenses to that and how we are governed means that it is extremely costly to run the academy. If we don't take the EFL funding and we maybe have our own model, there is payments that we have to pay back. So me closing the academy, there is payments that I would probably have to pay back to the EFL because we've closed it prematurely, whilst there was still funding available. So that was the feedback that I was getting. But that was pretty much it. But I do want to reiterate, I'm not trying to push this on anybody else. I'm not going to mention names, but people at the club were fully aware that my mindset was to close the academy. And if that has not been relayed right the way down to the parents and the children and the coaching staff within the academy, then my sincere apologies for that. That's a breakdown of communication. It shouldn't have happened. However, the people were fully aware that that was my mindset. In respect of looking at it moving forward, I went back, so the academy management had a meeting with Lee Turnbull yesterday at the club. I wasn't there, but I've had the minutes. I'm fully aware of what the conversations were. And I said to them that I'm fully appreciative that the academy is a big part of the community. It's a massive part of the community. Is, It's not a massive part of the football club, and I need people to understand that. That might sound harsh, but it doesn't achieve a lot for the football club other than keep the community engaged. Mm-hmm. And you know, and we'll go on to talk about that in a little while, because that is a big, you know, it was a big thing for me here. You know, you'll see the kids come here, you know, this doesn't have an academy. I closed the academy at Ilkeston when I took control, because it didn't work. It was a drain on the finances, but we did have a big junior network that we embedded into the club. We put the 4G in the junior, and this is what I wanted. This is what I was asking when I was asking people within the club, can we mould this into something different? And quite simply now I'm being told that potentially we can. So what I've said is that as long as I can see some clear evidence that moving forward next year, when we have no funding at all from the EFL, because there's no way we can get back in the EFL if we go down this year.
Sorry, the season after next season, when the funding will
So next season we'll get the 250k from the EFL. The following season we won't get anything. But obviously we know that if we go down this year, which is the likelihood, that we're not going to be able to get back in the EFL in time. So we know that the funding will stop altogether. And if what I don't want to do is prolong something this year and pump funds into it from the first team playing budget, or from the football club, or from myself, for only it to finish in a year's time. There's zero point in that. We may as well just bite that bullet now, as upsetting as it is for a lot of people. And it's upsetting for me as well. You know, I don't want to make these difficult decisions. They just have to be made. You know, it is that simple. But I'm being told now that, I mean, I've explained that, for instance, the scholarships takes a big proportion of the budget.
Yes.
So what I've potentially said to the staff is, can we look at a model where we have it up to 18s, but rather than have scholarships at the end of that, we maybe have a facility where we can then give any players that we feel are good enough full-time contracts immediately, rather than scholarships. If any of them want to go into further education, can we support them with that further education, as well as keeping them at the club on a part-time basis under a contract? Are these things possible? If they are, that will take a big proportion, because we're not EFL funded. Potentially we could do that, and it would keep the rest of the academy open. Then we have to look at self-funding. If the club's got to be sustainable, the academy will have to be sustainable. The way for that to work would be parents paying monthly subs for the children, sponsors coming on board for each age group. So each age group will be responsible for bringing their own sponsors for their kits, for the training wear. And if the community buys into that, and the individual coaches and parents buy into that, and local businesses buy into that, with the club's help, we'll push it as much as we can push it, and we'll assist. But literally, it has to financially stand on its own 2 feet. If that can happen, and I get the evidence with a business plan that can happen, then I will back it this year to make sure it stays afloat.
And what's your gut feeling on that? Do you think you will get the evidence? Do you think it's still up in the air? Is this a fluid situation?
I'm very confident from the staff's comments. Obviously, I can't comment for every parent. I can't comment for local businesses. You know, at the end of the day, everybody has to buy into it. You know, but if I get a business model in front of me, which I'm being told will be with me within the next few days, that the academy can be sustainable with less restrictions on it than we will with the EFL funding, you know, based on a slightly different model moving forward, then whatever it costs this year, I will make the difference, and we'll keep it going. And I'm confident that the staff will make that happen. But there has to be, some of that has to be taken away from me and the club, and has to be put on the community and on local businesses, you know, and on the coaching staff, and on the academy manager and other people, you know, that are involved.
What's the feedback been like, particularly on the academy, since the announcement over the weekend?
Horrific, you know, but I'm not on social media, so I don't see a lot of it. I do get snapshots sent to me at times, which, if anybody's watching this, I don't like. Please don't do it anymore, because the whole point of being off there is so that I don't see it. It don't mean that I want snippets here, there and every week, you know, at the end of the day. But I fully expect that response. You know, I have no issue with people taking issue with me or with the club because we're making difficult decisions. Yeah. There's a hell of a lot of people that understand why, but it's still upsetting for them, you know.
This is where I sit, okay? I understand that really difficult decisions have to be made, but as I keep saying, it's an emotionally charged topic for a lot of people. This is our club, this is our community. Even for those of us that don't live in the town anymore, we're still a massive part, and it will always be a massive part of us. So sometimes logic goes out of the window, and you're emotionally charged by the situation. But so I guess my conclusion from that then is it is a fluid situation, that the fate of the academy hasn't necessarily been sealed yet.
No, it's not been decided. If anything, I'm far more optimistic now that I think maybe that me putting it in the statement at the weekend has maybe kicked a few horses into gear.
Focus some minds.
And now people are understanding that it is a serious situation. Maybe some people thought that I was bluffing, or thought that didn't take my comments and my instructions seriously enough, and believed that it would remedy itself, and the fact that there would be financial consequences having to pay the EFL money back if we were to close it early. That would impact my decision, but it wouldn't have. The only way my decision will be changed is if I know that we're all rowing in the same direction. We get outside help from the people that the academy is important to, and if that happens, then I'm prepared to support it also. But I'm optimistic that it can happen. I know now there's a hell of a lot of people all fighting to make it happen. I'm promised that I'll have some sort of business plan on my desk after the bank holiday. So, and listen, I'm not going to just dismiss if there is a viable plan there, even if it needs tweaking. If there's something there that we can work with, we will work with it. This is not something I want to do. I don't want to close the academy, but it's something that I have to do if we can't find a way forward with it.
Okay, I think you've addressed that topic quite clearly. I think we'll move on to the next one, which is, we're obviously here at Ilkeston Town, and this is the club that you previously owned, Dave. And you announced in the statement as well that certainly as a short-term solution, that was my interpretation, as a short-term solution, you will be moving the playing side, the training side of the first team football to Ilkeston in the week. Do you just want to care to comment on that, how that's come about and why you think this is the best place for that?
So basically, everyone's aware that we've got a pitch at Glanford Park, and I know people have said, look, it was okay in the Championship. The pitch needs, I think, £27,000 we've been quoted for a reno, and that doesn't include.
This is the training pitch.
This is the training pitch that's at Glanford Park at the minute, and it also needs drainage installing, which is an extra cost. So we're talking significant monies to keep the training pitch. I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's been at least 3 training sessions since I've been in that haven't been able to take place, and they've had to go on the main pitch just because the drainage is so bad on there. It was the very first thing that I noticed when I came in, that it's substandard. It's substandard for a club of that size. And again, we refer back to the academy. The academy are training elsewhere. If we are to keep the academy, the idea is, people talk about community, needs to be all together. We need a facility that's bigger. We need more pitches. We need better pitches, and somewhere that feels like a community hub, and a proper football training facility, not just a pitch at the side of a motorway with no drainage that's unusable from time to time. So we look to explore options locally, short term, long term, to try and find a viable solution. I always say it wrong. Quibble Park was one we spoke to the council about. I think there's American football on there and athletics, and we couldn't have exclusivity of the site at which we need, because obviously we can't have people coming and going. The level of, we have a duty of care to the players. The players are our assets.
Well, it needs to be right. That's the whole reason.
It needs to be the right training facility. You can't have it open access. It has to be controlled by the club, and that wasn't an option. There wasn't really any other options. Bottisford was one that I discussed with Lee Turnbull, and phone's over there. I was going to show you a message. We were quoted £65 an hour. I think it equated to around, it was over £50,000 a year to use Bottisford.
Okay.
And in my opinion, I looked at it, and it's a situation here. Look, I love this place. I love the people here. You know, there's no disputing that. But that's not the reason. You know, the reasons for coming to Ilkeston are not because we're going to rebrand or merge. I mean, I've never heard so much nonsense in my entire life, honestly.
Can you, for the fans, then just completely dismiss any rumours and completely say now there will never be a merger of Scunthorpe United and Ilkeston Town?
I find it laughable. People comparing it to Milton Keynes. Of course there's no merger. First of all, any one of you, please tell me a benefit to merging two clubs. One that's at step 3, that is fully self-sustainable with great facilities, 100 miles away from the other, and the other is a much, much bigger club with a fantastic fan base, stadium. Is all it needs is a few areas tweaking.
Yeah, I get that.
Where would I benefit from merging the clubs? In what way? Milton Keynes was a different scenario. Milton Keynes was a town or a city that didn't have a football team, but had a 30,000-seater stadium or whatever, 25,000-seater stadium. It was, you know, a new area, a new location. Town. It didn't have a football club. Wimbledon was a club that was about to go out of business.
Correct. Yeah.
The owner purchased Wimbledon to relocate to Milton Keynes so that he could skip 6 or 7 leagues and be straight into the football league.
Ilkeston are lower in the pyramid than Scunthorpe.
There's one league between them.
Yeah.
I mean, where on earth would I benefit? I mean, and the FA wouldn't allow it anyway. I mean, honestly, there's so much that comes out. Some of it I laugh at. Some of it I bang my head against walls. Some of it I understand. That's the most nonsensical comment and stuff that I've ever seen. And maybe, I don't mean that disrespectful to people that maybe don't understand it, you know, but for anyone that understands football that asks that question, need to go and splash some water on their eyes, because that is just ridiculous. I mean, Ilkeston Town, quite simply, is a venue. That's all it is, a venue. Nobody comes and watch these lads train, and arguably, if I made the lads sign a non-disclosure and never told anyone, no one would ever know we were training here.
Yeah.
You know, the fact of the matter is...
Well, I think it might get out some way or another.
But nobody goes to watch training. And I appreciate that everybody wants it within the community, and I do. This would be, and I'll say this on camera now, at the very most for one season. At the very most for one season. Because I'm already in discussions with a piece of land. I mentioned to you earlier that it's a little bit more complicated, just because there's an illness and there's power of attorneys involved. But there's a piece of land behind the football club, which is just underneath the
bridge?
The viaduct. So literally, it's a 2-minute walk. Now, what that means, it's 15 acres. What that means is I can put an artificial 4G surface, floodlights, another 4 grass pitches. I can have the academy there, you know, if the academy continues or when the academy eventually comes back. Hopefully it's the first one of that.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. But it can have everybody there.
Yeah.
You know, it can have everybody there, and it will be, and that's what the goal is. Now, if that deal happens within the next 2 months or 3 months, and I can get a grass pitch installed quick enough, they might not be here at all.
Yeah. You
know, they might be here a couple of months. As soon as there is a pitch ready, you know, at Scunthorpe, the lads will go back to Scunthorpe, and they'll all be made fully aware of that. And at the very, very most, they will be here for a season if we struggle to find somewhere and get it ready quick enough. That's as simple as it is. This is purely a facility that I will help Ilkeston as much as we can as a club, because of the allegiances I've got and the love I've got for the club. I will, you know, because there's not much of a step between the clubs as well. If any of our fringe players or any of our players coming back from that need fitness or anything else, if we can help the club without it having, you know, any adverse effect on us, we will. You know, almost certainly we will. And that's the same here. They're just helping me, you know, and helping us, because we need a facility short term. And, you know. So
you quoted the figure that Bottisford, you mentioned the figure that Bottisford quoted. Mm-hmm. Can we ask about the fees involved in the lads training here? Is it nothing at all?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. I mean, there's a grass pitch out the back that needs a bit of a reno, which will benefit Ilkeston when we go. If we're here 3 months, you know, they've got a fully renovated grass pitch that they don't currently use because they only train twice a week in the evenings. So there will be certain benefits in that respect, but it's only facilities that are maybe enhancing slightly to benefit us while we use the facilities, and they will benefit from that. But financially, nothing. No.
But I guess that's still you just putting back into your local community as well, even if the Scunthorpe are only here 3-4 months. You know, it's just you as a local.
I don't begrudge spending. Yeah. I don't begrudge spending a bit of money here if it benefits both clubs. Yeah, of course I don't. Yeah. But you know, it may be when we don't have to come here at all. One thing I will say is the statement that I put out at the weekend, like with the academy, with everything else, it's pulled up a few meerkats. There's a few heads popped up, and people now starting to talk about things that, you know, they want to get involved. Exactly, and it's created more possibilities for us, and things may happen quicker than originally anticipated. So, but certainly the maximum that we would be able to be a season. Absolutely nothing to. The clubs will not interact. They will train in the evenings as they always do. We will train full time. You know, our players will eat here. Our staff will remain, and I'm sure you're going to get onto the staffing side of things at some point in the interview. But all of our staff, when I mentioned I was closing, I meant I was closing to the public as much. All of our staff that we do keep will remain at Glanford Park. You know, the stadium will be kept maintained and those sort of things. So the only people that will be here will be the players and anybody that the players need for the period that they're here to assist them.
And can you also then confirm that, barring us Scunthorpe playing Ilkeston in a pre-season friendly, you know, other than that happening, there is no plans, and Scunthorpe United will absolutely not play any home fixtures here?
Never. Never, ever. Absolutely not.
If there was potentially a pre-season friendly between the two teams.
If there's a pre-season friendly, they'll come here because obviously that helps Ilkeston. Yeah. You know, we've got a great fan base. Yeah. We would bring a good crowd down here. Half of them will want to be nosy, I should imagine. You know, and a few of them might want to come and shout at me, but you know, we will have a pre-season friendly here because of the relationship between the clubs. You know, and that's the only time we'll play a fixture on this pitch. Yeah.
Okay, I think you've covered up most things about Ilkeston. Then I think I know we're going to go later on to questions from the fans, but I think we've covered quite a long range of topics there. And I think this interview has turned out to be a hard hitting one, isn't it? You know, we're getting to the nook of a lot of topics that are, well, at the forefront of a lot of Scunthorpe United fans, and I hope we're putting to rest some of these anxieties. The next one that I want to ask is one that I know Twitter, you shouldn't really be looking there for these rumours, but one thing that I saw pop up was, you know, a potential relationship between yourself and Peter Swan prior to the sale or even post-sale. Can you just confirm to us now if you have had any relationship with Peter Swan prior to you approaching to buy the football club?
None at all. So, predominantly most of the discussions, I will reiterate, you know, I know the history between Peter Swan and the supporters, of course I do, it's quite apparent. But in the business that has been carried out through him and his lawyers and the agent, it's all been really smooth. You know, it happened very quickly, so it had to have been. And you know, for that, there is a respect there. I'm you know, from a business point of view, it's been very good. But no, this came up on my timeline because of local interest in Scunthorpe at the time. You know, so towards very close to when I purchased the club, it came up that there was some local interest from Alan. I was obviously looking for another club. We know that because I was interested in Bury at the time, and I decided to have a look. You never know what you're going to get. You know, there's a lot of hearsay on social media, as we know, and a lot of nonsense. So I contacted Begbie Trainer. Didn't know Peter Swan. Never spoke to Peter Swan. I knew what I'd read on Google and everywhere else. I contacted Begbie Trainer to ask questions. They very, very quickly wanted to put me under an NDA. And then before they would give me the relevant information that I would need to make a decision on whether I'm going to purchase the club, I had to provide evidence that I was serious, i.e. proof of funds. Yeah. And that wasn't just proof of funds. contrary to the belief of some of them on social media that have offered me £6, I think, back for the club. It was a little bit more than £6. It was enough to purchase the stadium, the land. It was enough to purchase, obviously, the company and any other assets that the company had. And it also needed to account for the fact there was an amount in a cash flow forecast that was needed to keep the club running until the end of the season, which was a league stipulation. So there was certain things that I had to provide straight away, which I did to Begbie Trainer. They provided me the information. I had a full team on it for 3 or 4 days where we were looking for everything, going backwards and forwards with questions. And then eventually I got to a point where I needed to be. And then it was arranged by Begbie Trainer for me to meet Peter Swan at the stadium, to have a look around and discuss the final detail of the deal. And that happened. We shook hands on the deal on that day. And then it went back to the lawyers and the agent again, and that was it. That was as simple as it was. I've obviously had several conversations with Peter Swan since the takeover. Partly, some of it was to do with banking situations and the transitions, and obviously to do with the lawyers that are dealing with the land sale at the minute. So and the stadium. So that's it. That's it. There's certainly, I don't know Peter personally. Certainly don't have any axe to grind.
I guess you said the deal was relatively smooth. The one outstanding thing from the deal is the sale of the land. We understand that there's still, but anyone who's bought a house understands that completion takes a while. Is that still on track?
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually in with the lawyers tomorrow. Just to run through a few bits and bobs.
Do you have any timescales on when that may complete?
The date is the 24th of May, so I'll know more tomorrow if there's anything flagged up. Any searches that are flagged up where there's any more searches got to be done that may prolong that. I don't envisage it going over that date. But like I say, I'm in with the lawyers at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, so it's with the lawyers. Everything's ready to go. Like you say, in a normal house purchase, I buy land and property for a living. It's you'll have searches carried out. If you're having a mortgage, you'll get your mortgage offer in place. You do all of that, and it's 6 to 8 weeks with no chain, as I mentioned before. When you're purchasing a football club, and this football club has
a lot of checks.
The football club itself, there's 5 different titles for a start. So that's 5 different land registry titles. The stadium and the surrounding land and different. There's a piece next to Costa Coffee that's on one title. There's a ransom strip or some sort of strip of land that's on another title. There's the car park on a title, the training pitch on a title. Then you've got phone masts that are on leases, and there's leases involved with other things and agreements that are in place that are able to use. So there's a hell of a lot more than just buying a house that the lawyers need to look into. And I knew full well it would take a number of months for that to happen. And the issue is, if I'd have not purchased the club and waited for it all to complete, I'm sure many people would have been a lot happier on the basis of the way the deal was structured. But arguably, you wouldn't have had a football club.
Yeah, I think it had to happen. We touched on our podcast, didn't we, on Monday, released on Tuesday. A sale needed to happen quite quickly. We knew we was getting into dangerous territory, so no, I think that answers that. I guess my next question would be: you mentioned earlier, Ilkeston, you've been a big part of this club, but yet you were still looking to move away and get a new opportunity, a bigger opportunity. What can you say to Scunthorpe United fans who are very pleased with you being the owner and chairman, and maybe are worried about you taking on a bigger and better opportunity elsewhere? Can you confirm that you're here to stay, basically?
At Scunthorpe?
Yes.
100% I'm here to stay. Obviously the difficult times and some of the stuff that has been fired at me over the last few weeks, I'm a little bit aggrieved about, I'm not going to lie. But like I say, 99% of it was fully expected. I saw one comment which it tickled me, if I'm honest. He says it's like my wife leaving me and cheating on me and leaving, and then finding out my new girlfriend sleeps around. That's something that was put, which tickled me a little bit. you know. So, but there's a lot of jest out there. There's a lot of joking. There's, you know, and then there's a lot of seriousness. And the seriousness is people are concerned. And whatever business it is, whether it's, you know, if you've got a prolonged sort of history of failure over a recent number of years, and the club has, that's not me slandering anybody, it's not me slandering ex-players, managers, owners, nothing like that. It's there for everybody to see. The club has failed miserably over the last few years, and it's been falling down the leagues because of it. And
I guess a lot of fans feel like they're coming out the back end of a toxic relationship, and I guess what I'd say to you is a lot of it might be is nervousness, is people very curious and apprehensive. Obviously, I can't speak for the people that have been quite personal,
but I get that. I fully get that, you know, and I fully get why people are sat on the fence and don't want to publicly back me or privately back me or anything else until they've seen. But what I can't condone, what I can't understand, and certainly I don't care about trolls. I don't care about cowards that hide behind fake names. I'm not interested in that. You know, they won't get the time of day. I don't care about supporters from other clubs. Genuine supporters of this football club need to remain positive. We all need to remain positive. Now, I understand that that's difficult, and I understand that, you know, that there are going to be scepticisms and nervousness and lack of trust. I get that. And I don't think it's just me. I think whoever came in would probably feel the same thing, apart from maybe Simon, because obviously he's a supporter and you know, and his consortium. And I get that. And maybe that has fueled some of it as well, because maybe the local lads didn't quite get it over the line. Maybe they would have, if I hadn't have stepped in, maybe they wouldn't have, and the club would have disappeared. You know, who knows what would have happened there.
I think even if they had managed to get it into, I don't think we'd have seen the level of investment that we've already seen. Question, Gareth, how do you feel about that? Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think there was still concerns about it.
Well, to be honest with you, you'd have had to have seen the investment, because most of the investment that's gone in at the minute has had to have gone in. You know, we're talking staff's wages, players' wages. We're talking HMRC, which is, you know, close to £500,000 already.
And to be fair to Simon and Ian, they did say that, didn't they? That they were exploring every possible option if they did become successful.
I've spoken to Simon several times. He messages me privately, and I like him. He's got some fantastic ideas, and I've openly said to him that once the dust settles a little bit, and I can, first and foremost, I have a plan. I have to start the implementation of them plans. I have to get them plans working and in process, and everybody buying into them plans for this to work.
And is that plan to make the club sustainable?
That's the only plan. It has to be sustainable. People talk about my wealth. You know, I'm not the wealthiest football owner in the world. You know, football club owner. I'm not. It's as simple as that. I'll hold my hands up to that. You know, shoot me. You know, I'm not. I don't have the funds to put into this football club year in, year out. And why would you want me to? Let's be honest about it. Let's say I came in and said I'm going to invest £30 million, which I don't have, by the way, and I will confirm that. But let's say I said I was going to invest £30 million into Scunthorpe United Football Club over the next 3 years, and we had some great success. But then my money runs out, or I get bored, or get hit by a bus, or have a heart attack, you know, and I disappear.
Yeah. So just laughing at Gareth there.
Laughing at me potentially having a heart attack.
Not you, Dave. We only found out yesterday.
I had a mini heart attack. I've got some scarring on my heart.
Oh my God.
Cardiologist, and he says the scarring is caused by a mini heart attack.
So this is an important message
So Gareth can't buy the club.
for you at home. If you think something's wrong, please get it checked out.
But you didn't know you had a heart or a heart attack.
Well, my wife's still on my heart.
She said many other things as well, Gareth.
But I mean, in respect of, eventually, either the money runs out, the love runs out, illness kicks in, something happens. Now, when that happens, if you're not running sustainably, you end up back in this situation. Whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, you end up back in the same situation, maybe worse. You know, maybe then it's insurmountable. You can't get over it. Someone's not, you know, and this club had it. You know, several times this club went out of business and back, you know, and back again. Would you not sooner have a sustainable club that sustains at a level where the investment goes into the infrastructure of the club, which then helps the club make the money itself, to generate the funds for the playing budget, so that you know that your playing budget is covered. And regardless of what happens to me as an owner, regardless of what happens moving forward, you know that you've always got a football club, first and foremost. And that is what I've said from day one. I have a plan. It has to be sustainable. I don't have the funds to put into this football club for 10 years and compete. I simply don't. But I have enough without killing myself and taking away my family's future to do something special with Scunthorpe. I do. And that's what I'm looking to do.
I guess another difficult decision that was made, that what came out in the statement was, in fact I can't remember if it was touched on in the statement, I presume it was, but they mentioned that we will obviously go part-time off. This is aside from the playing side, office admin side, we're going to go part-time from next season. Did you feel like that was necessary?
The staff going part-time?
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, perhaps didn't come across exactly how it was meant to in the interview. I appreciate that the interview was kind of rushed. It was on a match day. It was the first time that I'd been up at the club to be able to do it.
Did you feel quite emotionally charged during the interview?
I think on Saturday I was quite angry, and I did it after the game as well.
Because of the performance, or because of the
that
online?
added to it. But obviously the build-up. I had a tough week last week. You know, I was in bed for a couple of days. I weren't very well. Hence why I probably had my head in my phone longer than I should have. Hence why I made the decision to come off social media, because I was perhaps looking at things longer than I normally would. And then just started to get a feel that just felt like shit. I'm not going to lie. I felt like shit last week. And so Saturday kind of capped that off. Then we had the performance that we had, and yeah, it probably was a little bit emotionally charged. I know people saying it was fully scripted and this, that. It wasn't scripted. I'll tell you, the initial opening statement that I made and the conclusion I read. I'll be openly honest. I wrote it myself, but I read that. Yeah. But then I had a list of all the topics that needed to be covered, and that was just spoken about as it needed to be. There was no scripts, and I wanted to cover everything. But it, when you're in that situation, it perhaps don't come across. So going back to the staffing side, what I said is there would undoubtedly be redundancies, and I stand by that. There will be, but that isn't the case where I'm going up to Glanford Park and I'm boarding up the windows, I'm chaining up the gates, and I'm going to watch the place rust, and I'm going to leave bird shit all over the seats that I've seen on, and I'm going to leave the place to rot. That's not, and the staff are all just going to be marched out the door and given bus fare home. That's not what was going to happen. It was never what was going to happen. What will happen is the club will scale down because of the level we're at. It will scale down. So the times that it is open to the general public will be less. Mm-hmm. It will be less. It has to be less. There are certain departments where, certainly if Scunthorpe at Ilkeston, where things like restaurants won't be open, during the day, where at the moment they are, because they feed the players. So, but again, that could change, because if all of a sudden we get a training facility open,
if that's expedited.
So there's still a lot that can happen. But it's not a case where I'm going to be sitting down with staff and saying, right, off you go. Your notice period is such and such. I'm going to sit down with every staff member that's full-time at the football club. The casual staff will still need them anyway. So, because predominantly they're match days. So I'll be sitting down with every staff member, and we will look at how many of those are happy to go or want to go, because it's been a traumatic time for some of them.
So,
a lot of them have been looking for other jobs because they know that the club was on death's door. So arguably they've been looking for other jobs. Like two of the lads in the commercial department had job offers. They didn't conveniently get job offers because David Hilton came in and they thought he was a wanker. That's not what I'm... Can I swear, by the way?
Yeah. Well, maybe not do what you want.
Yeah, but...
We do... We're not keen on nudity, but...
Right. Okay.
Well, I'm not. Marco, on the other hand.
Neither is my missus, where I'm concerned. But,
go on. No, you've seen the podcast. It does get quite blue, to be fair, yeah.
But, I mean, it's not a case where these lads have all of a sudden thought, I like the staff. I get on with all the staff. But it's a case where I've got to sit with the staff. I've got to look at who are happy to go, but they haven't gone because they don't want to let the club down or leave the club in the lurch. You know, I need to understand that. I need to understand that who can drop to part-time, who can drop in salary, you know, who can drop hours, who we can move from one job to maybe another, who can go to match day and a bit more casual, and look at the whole process and try and work with all the staff that we can to make sure that there isn't too many upset people. Because at some point, arguably, this is a short-term fix.
Yeah.
We're going to need them back, or certainly people to fill them positions. So it's not a case. Glanford Park will still be open. There will still be stadium managers. There will still be security managers. There will still, you know, that manage the security for match day. There will still be groundsmen. There will still be volunteers that are coming around and tidying the stadium. There'll still be cleaners. There'll still be, you know, I'll be honest, Steph that works in the hospitality, she's my favourite person at the club. You know, I've not even had a chance to sit down with her yet.
Steph, Dave loves you.
But, you know, I don't want people to... I think the portrayal of the statement that I put out at the weekend is, he is the monster that people are trying to portray that he is.
I don't know about that. I think a lot of people were concerned, if I can say this, that it happened with in-house in the club, and it wasn't done with fans or on the radio. I think people would have liked to have seen that. So, you know, we are very grateful that you've come onto this platform to do that. I don't necessarily think the statement was particularly negatively received across the board. You guys?
No, I mean, like I said, a lot of it you could sort of understand. It's needs must. But yeah, like I said, a lot of it, like you said, was the fact it was done in-house. People maybe felt like the questions were sort of tailored towards.
I think you've got to remember. I mean, it was rushed.
Yeah, of course.
And it was rushed because I was coming on the back. I was coming to the game. To be honest, I wouldn't have come to the game on Saturday. I'd have watched it at home because I didn't feel 100%. I was still at the tail end of an illness. So it was a situation for me. I felt that I had to because there was so much coming out. And the biggest problem you've got is when I ducked out of social media because I didn't want to fire back at idiots because I weren't in a great place because of the stuff that was being spoken, the way I was being spoken about. It's not nice, you know, when your partner's asking you if you're okay, you know, because they can see that you're down, your family can see that you're down, you know, and I'm a nightmare when I'm ill anyway. So it is a situation where I took myself off for that reason. But and I also took myself off for the reason that when you're on social media, I want to respond to everybody. But the problem is I don't respond to cowards and idiots. But then if I don't, it looks like I'm ducking the question and I've got something to hide. Which is exactly what happened when I came off. I came off so that I could just avoid, and then all of a sudden it's because someone from Bury jumped on me and started asking me uncomfortable questions. Utter shit. I came off because I was sick of seeing negativity at a time when I'm extremely positive about the club, about the future, about what I can achieve and what my team can achieve, what Jimmy can achieve, what the players can achieve. And the supporters will see that, I think, in due course.
Just coming back to the changes in the staff then, do you expect that kind of return to its current level as we get back into the National League? Presumably we go down and then back into the football league?
Listen, the mechanics of the club is going to slow up. It's going to ease. We have no choice about that. You know, we're not in this position because of me. You know, I can only remedy the situation I've inherited. You know, so the situation is we have things that we have to do. It's uncomfortable, but again, people are saying the staff found out about, you know, that they were going to be made redundant. Well, no staff found out they were going to be redundant on an interview with me because we've not even decided who's going to go. We've got to sit down with all these. All I said was there would be redundancies. And everybody at that football club knows there are going to be cost-cutting exercises. They know there are going to be redundancies. I don't need to tell them. You know, all I will say is I am very respectful of the people that are at the club. I'm very respectful of the fact that they've worked tirelessly in some difficult times. And I'm certainly not looking to throw anybody out the door. We're going to look to try and accommodate everybody as much as we can without it impacting the progression of the football club.
before we go to the fans' questions, I'll just ask two more. So my next one is regarding Jimmy Dean and the opportunity that you've given him to manage at National League level. And do you think well, I presume I know the answer to this, but will you continue to invest in his squad, and will you give him every opportunity to succeed next season, regardless of what league we're in? Presumably it will be National League North. Will you give him every opportunity possible to succeed?
100%. I will make this clear, and Jimmy knows. Jimmy's an honest guy. Jimmy knows the pressures that he's going to be under next year are going to be very different to what he was under here. But
the expectation will be different.
The expectation will be different, and the pressures from me as a chairman over a manager will be different. You know, he knows that. People have mentioned that I knew Jimmy Dean personally. You know, people that want to pretend that they're in the know, and they got all this inside information. And I was friends with Jimmy Dean. I'd spoken to Jimmy Dean twice over the phone, prior to him being offered the job face to face. I'd never met Jimmy Dean prior to me owning Scunthorpe United. I'd had a couple of dealings with players that were coming to Ilkeston with Jimmy. I knew of his record. I knew how highly thought of he was at this level, and you know how much he's done at these levels to work his way up. He had a side. People may not like this, but one eye was obviously on the fact we knew I was coming into a difficult task of keeping us up. I knew that, you know, it was with the best will in the world to bring 13 players that aren't currently playing at their clubs either via injury or not being selected, to then throw them together and try and gel a squad in the time we had left to create basically playoff form to keep us up was a real task. And I'm not saying we've given up. You know, we won't give up until it's physically impossible, mathematically impossible. But we knew it was a difficult task. So one eye had to be on plan B, worst case scenario. And there's no better manager available, or no better manager about, in my opinion, than the up-and-coming Jimmy Dean now. He had a side, he's used to winning, a completely different curve to this football club. He's used to winning football matches. That's first and foremost. And it's infectious. You know, Jimmy is infectious with his passion, with everything that he does. And the fact that we are going to be at a level that he understands, and arguably I understand a lot more, the likelihood is we'll be at that level. I think he'll be extremely successful. He had a side, people talk about playing budgets. You know, he had a playing budget of less than, it was 6,800 quid, I believe. Don't hold me to that, but it was in and around them figures, £6,800. He was under embargo for 6 months at the club he was at. He left the club while it was still in embargo. Couldn't sign any players. And he had them one place outside the playoffs in a league he'd only just gone up to. That's, you know, arguably we will have a playing budget significantly high. Well, it's not arguably, certainly have a playing budget significantly higher than that. The players that we can attract to the football club because of the fan base and because of what we're doing will be significantly better, than no disrespect, than what Peterborough Sports can. So Jimmy will have everything at his disposal to be successful. Now, I can't guarantee that he's going to be. I have every ounce of confidence that he will, but I can't guarantee that he will. And he knows he's under pressure next season. But he has my full backing, 100%.
So last one for me then, Dave. Financially, the club that you inherited in Scunthorpe United, was it in the position you expected it to be in, or were there lots of skeletons in the closet? How did it compare to your expectations financially?
Pretty much. I mean, I'm obviously going to miss things, and there'll be a few surprises along the way. It's a business that is over 100 years old. It's had many owners, and you know, there's things around the stadium, you know, staff. You know, there's a lot of things to take into account. You know, severance packages for people that are no longer at the club. So, you know, and some of it was arguably shouldn't have been, but was probably missed because of the speed of the process. I think my biggest concern at the time when I was buying the club is that time was getting the deal completed was the key.
To give us chances.
To give us a chance. And arguably I cut corners in the due diligence that maybe in in other circumstances, maybe if it was in the close season, I certainly would have spent a lot more time. But we didn't have that. And like I say, to be honest, the books were in good order. I'm not saying the figures were healthy, but the books were in good order.
Clean.
And most of it was pretty much as I expected. I did expect certain things to work with the club a little bit more, maybe the HMRC to work with the club a little bit more. But I think now, and it's the same with any football club, everybody seems to frown on football clubs. No one, the merchant facilities regarding the season tickets. I know people talk about, well, you can put a bond in, and well, there's no difference. If I'm going to put a bond in, they may as well hold the money. Yeah. There's no difference, whichever way we look at it. And they were things that you weren't expecting. You don't expect to say, okay, well, we can sell £200,000 worth of season tickets, but then we're going to get the money at £10 per person a game.
Yeah.
When we can sell them on a match day, no disrespect to supporters, but if we're going to get 10, we may as well wait and get £20.
Presumably the merchants charge a fee as well.
They charge a fee, and then they want to hold the money. Or, to be fair, we've not been given the option to put a bond in. I do believe the previous regime had a bond in place, but I don't see the difference. I don't see the difference of, however the money is there, the club aren't receiving the benefit. I may as well put the 200 grand into the club as put it into the merchant provider and not sell season tickets. So, which I am doing. So there's certain things that were a surprise. Not many nice surprises. Most of them are of the other variety, but you kind of expect that when you buy a business that's as old as it is, as closely watched as it is, and in the public eye, the amount of staff that it has, in the position that it was in, you expect things. So.
I think we've covered all the topics I certainly wanted to ask. We'll go to the fans' questions now. I hope it's a bit more snappy than what we've just done. Some of them, I guess, will be a lot light-hearted questions.
Yeah, of course. It is. This is just what obviously fans on Twitter want a little bit more information on, but normally wouldn't have.
Okay, Marco, over to you then.
Yeah. So first we've got Alex, and he's thinking, unless there's something missing, the fact that we're going to be training on an artificial 4G pitch all week and then playing on a normal grass on a Saturday, will this have an impact on the team? Okay,
so there is a grass training facility at Ilkeston as well. So this is what I spoke about earlier, where there'll be a little bit of money put in. Obviously, if we do end up being here, if things materialise that happen quicker than expected, we may not need to be. But if we do end up here, which is the plan at the moment, then there'll be a grass training facility, which the players will be on most of the time. There'll be drainage put in place, and there'll be a grass facility here, which will just work.
So this would only get used if needed with weather.
The 4G, well, they'll have it, that'll be entirely up to the player side. It'll be up to Jimmy that he can decide which he wants to use at that time, and that'll be down to him.
Then I've got another one off Becky, and she's asked if, obviously you've mentioned redundancies and obviously people cutting back their hours, will we be relying on any volunteers to keep the club running?
I mean, the more volunteers, the better.
Right, okay.
I will say that certainly at the levels, but any football club at any level, volunteers are fantastic. Yeah. They're the heartbeat of the club. They're certainly the heartbeat of a club of this size. Right. I know Scunthorpe's a lot bigger, but arguably they're much bigger with a much bigger fan base, so that arguably there should be more volunteers. And I'm happy to open the doors to any volunteers that want to carry out any improvements or anything that will benefit the football club if they've got some free time, and I'll be forever thankful. Yeah. So we won't be relying on them. Whatever don't get done by volunteers will get done. That I can promise. But if there are volunteers to do it, great.
It's reassuring. Yeah.
Gareth, over to you for one.
All right then, Damo75.
Is that his real name?
Oh, I don't know his real name. It's just on Twitter, isn't it? Damo75. That's all I've got. I guess it's Damien, who's born in 1975. He'd like to know, as a lot of people have asked about the club badge, have you considered about changing it back?
No.
Maybe don't know
it's
this.
A simple answer. I have seen in the early stages of taking over that people were bringing up sort of an older emblem type badge. And whilst I'm not completely against the idea, I mean, I rebranded this place when I came in. I believe there are better things to speak. You've got to remember,
This is low down the
rebranding a badge is
process.
rebranding the whole club, from the signage to the programs to the, to the signs inside the stadium to stationery to the tickets. There's so much of an expense to rebrand a club as a whole, and it's an expense that's not necessary at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's nothing to do with the fact I'm against. If the supporters in the future, when we're in a financially better position, want to do that, then it's something arguably they can have a vote on. But right now, there's other priorities.
Definitely. Also, Martin Jewett as well. This has been covered earlier. In fairness, he says, for me, I hope he can categorically say we will never play a home league game at Ilkeston.
A home league game? No, of course we won't. Never.
Mark Owen?
Yep, so I've got one off. I've just got Steve. If there's any possibility that the deal for the land and the ground might collapse, and if so, where would it leave the club?
No possibility. I mean, it has to happen for Peter Swan as much as it has to happen for us as a club. There's complexities. Of course, there's complexities to any deal of that value. But no, the deal will happen. The club will own the stadium. I know people are massively concerned about that. They don't need to be. Yeah. They really don't need to be.
Okay. Yeah, another one from Jarek Zesner. I get the names, don't I? Zen. Oh, Pete knows.
Producer Pete, by the way, doing absolute bits for us.
It just said, this is also being covered. I'm just asking questions that are being covered.
But it's good for them to feel like that.
Yeah, it just says, make sure to ask him when the coaching staff of the academy had been notified by him or his team what was happening. When? Have the coaching staff. But obviously you mentioned that.
Yeah, well, I've showed you the evidence that I notified the relevant people that was happening, and if it's not fed down the chain, I sincerely apologise on myself, on behalf of myself and other staff members that maybe should have passed it down further down the line. But yeah, I've made the decision.
I think that was a big one for everyone when it came out. People didn't want to just thought they found out over sort of social media. Yeah. But like you said, you've shown us that wasn't the case. I've got a question. I've got two similar ones, Becky and Leon. Becky asked, will there be 4 choices of kits again for the fans to pick next season? So this year, they sort of launched a poll with 4 kits, and that was the case. For
it's hard hitting stuff.
Yeah.
I think the kits have already been designed. They're already in the process of being made.
Okay. And then, is that Macron again?
And they're fantastic, by the way. Yeah, Macron.
Right. Okay.
I say they do good kits.
I had an input with one.
Yeah. Is it red and white?
You are a naughty man.
That's going to be next.
You're a naughty man. You didn't think it'd be Gareth that would stitch you up, did you?
I'm just thinking, is it red and white? It's not.
You go again.
All right, this one, Rusty Iron.
That's definitely his real name. His mum didn't like him.
That'll be the stadium when I bought it up.
Are there any plans to invite new board members?
It's certainly something I'll look at in the future. Again, I need to implement my plan right now, and I need to get everybody on board with that. And once we're smooth running and we're back on that upward curve, then we can look at addressing more involvement with supporters and stuff. Yeah.
With regards to that, I've got a couple of questions of numerous people regarding Sharp and Elliott. One was, would there ever be interest in sort of striking a kind of partnership with a club with Simon Elliott?
A partnership in what respect?
Regarding sort of coming onto the board, or
maybe an advisory role, consultancy role. I think you've covered that actually.
To be fair, I like Simon.
Yeah.
I back myself. I don't really need the place. I need advisors.
Right, okay.
I've got people in place where I need advice. But I wouldn't rule out. Like I said, I think he's got some wonderful ideas of what he was going to do. I really like him from the brief times that we've met and spoken. He's been very supportive of me, and I've got huge respect for him. And of course, there could be some involvement in the future. How that looks at this time, I just don't know.
Okay, Phil Pinder.
Your mate, isn't he?
He was on Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
But what happens to the players and coaching staff living north of Scunny and around? Are they going to be reimbursed for travel?
Right. So, because obviously, if we do end up here training, so at the minute, I think the majority of our players come from further afield. So certainly the newer recruits, you know, we've got lads from all over because, again, we had a certain pool of players that we could pick from, and, you know, logistically, you know, it didn't work. So we had to pull them from all over the place. So if we were basing on it now, I mean, the amount of lads that we've got in accommodation at the minute is quite high. And it'd be no different here. You know, lads would have the option if, you know, you've got to bear in mind, if I have to accommodate lads temporarily down here while we're down here, then, you know, I can do it far easier than I can up there because I've got access to property and stuff down this end anyway. But, and I will reiterate this, the conversations that I've had in the last couple of days, like I say, the statement at the weekend has brought a lot more, you know,
focused a lot of minds.
Yeah,
I think
and I'm hopeful that our stay here, if at all, will be minimal. Maximum of a year, but minimal. And I'm talking hopefully weeks, months, you know, a few months.
May not even happen from what you said.
May not even happen. So, but if it does, and we've got to bear in mind that we don't even know what the squad's going to look like. The majority of the players will be out of contract in the summer. So what we have to do is we have to, you know, lads will be recruited on the basis that if we're training here in the week, we're in the centre of the country. You know, the lads that want to commute can commute. If lads are coming from further afield, they'll be accommodated. And it'll be the same, bearing in mind, let's say we train here and we've got a new training facility ready by September or October, and then we shift back up to Scunthorpe. There'll be a lot of lads that aren't having to go in accommodation here that will if we go to Scunthorpe. And we will just remedy that as we go. You know, we will deal with that as we go.
Yeah, so obviously we got made aware that Sharp and Elliott paid the November wage. We were just wondering if that, well, this is from Matthew, we were just wondering if that was a loan or a donation, and if it was a loan, will we get paid back?
So obviously in all the paperwork that I've had, it was a donation to the football club. You know, it's not a debt to the club. It's not something I'll be looking to refund.
Yeah. John G, you've got 2 questions. First of all, can you ask him how many of the signings were the managers?
That's a good question, that.
Yeah.
Well, all of them.
Right.
I mean, of course, there's other people at the club, myself included, that bring, when we spoke about Liam Thompson, which I heavily push for, and utilise contacts to achieve it. But, you know, myself, Lee, and several others at the club, and Jimmy, obviously Jimmy's the main part of it. And then there's various different, you know, sites that we've got that football clubs have access to. So it's a joint effort to bring the names to the table. Every single one of them are Jimmy's signings, because if Jimmy says no, they don't come. It's that simple. And that will be the same whoever was in charge. You know, you know that there is. It's their decision. At the end of the day, it's their job. So
yeah. He also asks. This was sort of covered earlier as well, in fairness. It says, could you ask me if there's any regrets on taking over since he has had time to fully investigate the state of SUFC, including its finances, because as he admitted in his interview with Radio Humberside, the whole process took around 10 days, and that seems hardly enough time.
Nailed that for question 1, didn't I?
It's been covered before, so thank you, John G.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, and last one for me, I've got one off Paul Crosby, who, like I said earlier, just wanted to confirm if we definitely would be playing Ilkeston pre-season.
I'm pretty certain. Yeah. I'm pretty certain.
Yeah.
You know what? I think, like I've said, I do have a lot of love for the club, the supporters. They were really good to me here.
Yeah.
I know it's a much smaller fan base. They gave me the time to implement my plans, which I'm hopeful that Scunthorpe fans will.
Yeah.
They allowed me to do what I said I was going to do. I backed up every promise I made and probably exceeded some. And you've seen the facilities that a club of this size have got. And I think it's a situation that if I can give anything to this club without it negatively impacting us as a club, you know, then I will, as much as I can whenever I can. And the fact of the matter is, coming here for a pre-season for an hour, I know we'll bring, on a nice hot summer day, I know we'll bring a fair few.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be here, won't we, Gareth?
We'll be here. Yeah, well, as long as my wife lets me.
Well, oh, is that a pop shot at me?
Well, it could be, if you want it to be.
I've got a question off Trev, saying, with the first team players operating in the week away from Scunthorpe, will that have any effect on sort of, say, a visit from schools, keeping in the local community? He says he does hope there's something in place for visits and for our next generation of fans. Thank you, Mr. Hill, for saving our club up behind.
Thank you, and no, it won't have any impact on any community commitments. You know, at the end of the day, it's an hour away. You know, we're not. It's an hour up the motorway. So any community commitments we will schedule, and lads will fulfil them. And arguably, we'll look to do more, if I'm honest, to make sure that we keep the link with the community as much. Certainly, if we are feeling like we're being a little bit distant in what we're having to do to save money temporarily, then I think it's more important that we involve ourselves in the community as much as we can.
I say Mike has a very similar question to that, just about the community and local schools and just getting involved and things. So I think I covered it.
Have we got any more, Gareth?
A few more, actually.
Yeah, okay, let's
I was done with
if we've got I think
have a look.
time some
Because on one of them old VHS, we'd run out of tape, wouldn't we?
Is there a possibility the deal for the land and ground mind claps? And if so, where does that leave us?
We've had this.
No, we've just had that one,
Yeah, the ones you've got might be...
I'm having deja vu here.
Yeah. Sorry.
Any more that we haven't?
Well, I don't know.
Have you ever seen Gareth flustered?
Oh, many times. I edited it out on my vlog.
I know what it's going to be with now.
Go on.
Yeah, go on.
It's going to be spaghetti or something like that, isn't it?
Oh, it's to do with pancakes. Are we going for thick American type or the little crepe?
I cheat. I just buy the pre-made ones that I just put in the microwave.
Well, I'll have it.
I tell you what, this podcast is a joke, innit? we have all these ambitions of like nailing these hard-hitting questions, and we're asking about pancakes.
Well, someone had to.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions from the fans? Anything from you guys? Have you got anything that left unanswered?
A lot of mine were covered in there. Obviously,
I was saying.
Oh, of course they was.
No, a lot of mine were obviously the initial conversation regarding moving to Ilkeston.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was done in the sort of heat of the moment, like a knee jerk, but like just clarifying it all.
Yeah.
Like I said,
the community as well, community side of things, and
I wonder if you could reveal which players are under contract for next season. If you know, it may be that you don't know off the top of your head. Which
I do
is
know.
Understandable.
I just don't want to upset. I suppose I can tell you are.
Yeah, I
But
suppose.
then if I tell you are, then you kind of know who aren't. So,
right, okay.
We'll leave it.
and to be fair, if they're not under contract but we want to keep them, we will fight to keep them.
okay.
If they are under contract but they want to go, they'll still go. So there's not a massive amount of relevance. Because all I'll tell you is we are actively working already now on potential signings based on the worst case scenario.
Okay.
And we're setting the bar high.
Okay. Well, I think that probably concludes the podcast. It's more of an interview at times, but a big thank you, Dave, for coming on. We know that you don't do a lot of interviews and certainly don't do a lot of filmed ones, so a big thank you for taking the time with us and inviting us down here to Ilkeston. Big thank you to Mark Hughes, Marco, Gareth, aka Iron Army, and of course the people at know.film who sponsor this podcast and do a fantastic job. Producer Pete over in the corner doing absolute bits for us. I've been Barrett as always. Up the iron.